Welcome. Today, we're cracking the case of the internal audit assurance engagement. We're going to unpack the playbook, the structured three-phase process that auditors use to provide some serious value and insight to an organization.
Okay, first things first, we got to understand the mission. An assurance service, which is what we're focused on today, is all about providing an independent evaluation and a formal opinion on things like controls or processes. Now, that's really different from advisory services, which are more about giving recommendations and guidance. You can think of it like a referee making a call in a game versus a coach on the sidelines giving advice. Two very different roles.
At the very heart of every single assurance engagement are these three fundamental phases: plan, perform, and communicate. But here's what's really interesting, and what this slide gets at. This isn't some rigid 1, 2, 3 checklist. In the real world, these phases are super dynamic, and they totally overlap. Planning keeps happening as new info comes in, and communication, that's happening all the time, not just in a big report at the very end.
So let's dive into phase one, planning. You can think of this as drawing the map that's going to guide the entire audit. This is all about building a solid foundation, because a great plan is what makes sure the engagement is efficient, effective, and totally focused on what actually matters.
Auditors pretty much live and breathe by the 6 Ps principle. Proper prior planning prevents poor performance. And why is that? Because the quality of the entire engagement hinges on how strong the plan is. It's really that simple. Failing to plan is just planning to fail. This is the stage where auditors make absolutely sure they're looking in the right places for the right things. So how do they actually build this super important plan? Well, it's a process made up of 9 essential activities. Together, these steps create that detailed roadmap for the audit. It covers everything from defining the objectives and the scope to really understanding the risks, and of course, making sure the right people are on the job.
You know, a really crucial part of planning is identifying what's called inherent risk. Now, what this means is looking at potential problems, like fraud or major errors, as if no controls existed at all. It's the raw risk. By figuring out the potential impact and the likelihood of these raw risks, auditors can focus their energy where it's needed most, on the areas with the highest exposure.
And all of that planning work, it all comes together in one critical document: the Engagement Work Program. Think of this as the detailed investigative plan for the entire audit. It's a formal document that spells out every specific procedure, every tool they'll use, and every team member's assignment. It literally guides every single action the audit team is going to take.
All right, let's move on. Our map is drawn, so now it's time to get on the ground. Phase 2, performing, is all about putting that work program into action and gathering the evidence. The facts and clues we need to actually form a conclusion.
The performance phase is really where the rubber meets the road. It involves these 5 key activities. Everything from conducting tests, like inspecting documents, to carefully evaluating all the evidence they find. The big goal here is to collect enough reliable evidence to back up whatever the audit's final opinion is.
But what happens when an auditor actually finds something? A gap, an error, some kind of issue? How do they take that simple observation and turn it into a formal, structured finding that management can actually understand and act on?
And this slide right here gives us the answer. Every single credible audit finding is built using what we call the 4 Cs. A finding only really exists if the condition, what's actually happening, doesn't match the criteria, what should be happening. The cause explains why there's a gap, and the consequence, or the effect, explains why it even matters.
Let's make this feel a little more real. So imagine the criteria. What should be happening is that all invoices have to be paid within 30 days to get a discount. But the auditor discovers the condition, what is happening, is that 20% of them are being paid late. The cause? Well, it might be an inefficient approval process. And the consequence? The company is losing $50,000 a year in discounts. See how that structure makes the issue crystal clear and really compelling?
Okay, so with all the evidence gathered and the findings neatly structured, the final phase begins: communication. Now, this isn't just about dropping a report on someone's desk. It's about presenting the case in a way that actually drives meaningful action and improvement.
And a really key takeaway here is that communication is not a one-time thing at the end. As this timeline shows, it's a continuous process. Auditors give interim updates to management throughout the audit to talk about issues as they pop up. It's a no-surprises approach, which means by the time the final report comes out, everybody's already on the same page. And the job still isn't done until the follow-up confirms that the issues have actually been fixed.
That final report delivers a formal opinion.
It can be what's called reasonable assurance, which is a positive conclusion that the controls are working well. And it's often summed up with a rating system like red, yellow, or green. Or it could be limited assurance, which is a negative conclusion. That basically means the auditors are saying, hey, nothing came to our attention to suggest there's a problem.
So, let's wrap this up. These three dynamic phases, thorough planning, evidence-based performance, and continuous communication, they all have to work together. It's an interconnected system designed from the ground up to produce a credible, valuable audit that actually helps the organization reach its goals.
So now that we've walked through the entire case file, from the very first plan all the way to the final report, it's time to turn the final verdict over to you.
I want you to reflect on the whole process we just covered. Which of these three phases, planning, performing, or communicating, do you believe really has the greatest impact on whether an assurance engagement is successful or not, and why? Your answer to that question gets right to the heart of what an auditor's professional judgment is all about.